Yogis, thank you for joining the first episode of the second season of Yoga Chats. And today I have two wonderful guests. I have one of the most powerful men in the Irish yoga scene who you may or may not know, Colm Walsh, owner of Yoga Dublin. And I have, without a doubt, the most powerful woman in the Irish yoga scene, Lisa Wilkinson, owner of the Elbow Room. Thank you both for joining today.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
So we know each other a long time. We know each other well. We regularly have dinner and wine catch-ups. And we started, well, we could dial it back 20 years ago when in the yoga scene, to go to a yoga class, and yoga classes were few and far between, you would have gone to a school hall or something like that. I know even the likes of the YMCA didn't want yoga in there because it was seen as a Hindu practice. It was an absolutely different world. And then within quite a short time, I guess the three of us popped up. So tell me a little of your stories and your experience of that time 20 years ago.
Well, I guess if I start, because I met Greg on the same training, which I had the good fortune to sign up to, which was the Iyengar method. And my first experience of yoga was a good one, luckily, because I was living in Dublin 8. I was in my mid-20s and now my mid-50s. And I had severe problems with lower back pain, just jamming up. I have a structural deficit that I need to constantly maintain. I didn't realize it at the time. But the physio said, you can keep coming to me every 4 to 6 weeks. I'll take your money, but you really need to do something to maintain it. And at that time, I was a bit of a lounge lizard and a barfly, and I was running clubs, and my habits were quite nocturnal. And I was standing around a lot, listening to bands and listening to music. And my posture was probably pretty bad. So I literally went home that night, and a flyer came through the door saying, yoga classes in a quite scruffy gym in the college up the road in Dublin 8. But I met the most wonderful teacher, who is Orla Punch, still a very good friend of mine, and Greg's and Lisa's. And she is still one of the best teachers around in Dublin. And I had the really good fortune of just a great experience. She had herself come through, which a lot of, I think it's fair to say, the new wave of yoga teachers in the 90s were coming maybe from Shivananda or from Tony Quinn. And then Iyengar just happened to get established quite well here, and Orla embraced the Iyengar method. And I got so much out of it. I found by the end of 6 weeks course, or the end of 8 weeks or 12 weeks, my lower back pain disappeared. But then more importantly, I really experienced good sleeping habits and a feeling of letting go, stress reduction, because the business I was in at the time was fairly stressful. So I guess that's where I met Greg. We signed up, we were encouraged by Orla to sign up for the Iyengar Introductory, level 1, level 2. And you were
1 year ahead of me, I seem to remember. So, but we seem to overlap for 2 years, because it was a 2-year training. It was a 2-year one forever in a way.
It did seem to go on forever, and we had lovely lunches in the Crumlin Shopping Centre in a smoky cafe in between our classes. Yes, because that's where we were training, in a creche on the Crumlin Road.
Eggs and beans, and then back for back bends.
Like reeking of cigarette smoke from the other diners. Yes, it was really, really, really classy. And then I suppose it's fair to say we might have rubbed shoulders in a few of the many late night Dublin places that were opening at the time. It was quite a Hallison days. So, like Greg, who was in a different industry, a lot of his customers, my clients who were in the nightclub scene, band scene, were trying out yoga classes during the week. So it was an interesting crossover, and it was all coming from that sort of club 90s community sort of rave scene that I tipped my toes into. And it was wonderful because during the week you had a sort of continuity. You met the same sort of people around Dublin 8, Dublin 2 you were hanging out with. And more importantly, it was a great way to offset what the nights were doing to you. So I really found it in my late 20s a really grounding practice. Anyway, that's enough of me. But we should hear a bit from Lisa. Lisa, do you want to say something?
Yeah. So I got to experience yoga when I moved to Dublin. A few years after I moved to Dublin, I was working in the IFSC for a high-value Irish business banking entrepreneur, and it was in a company called Baltimore Technologies. And I just moved in from San Francisco, which was a very cool, relaxed, easy life, if you like. And I found myself wearing a suit for the first time in a million years, working in the IFSC for a group of misogynists, let's say, and that's why I'm not mentioning anyone's names. And it was a really stressful experience. And I experienced for the first time stress, like proper stress, to the point where my mental health got really, really shoddy. And I got to the point where I became paranoid. I thought there was a conspiracy going on. I was really unwell. And a friend of mine who had kind of suffered similar things in the past recommended I go to a yoga class. So I got on my bike, cycled into somewhere in, I think it was Bagot Street, and on the way on my bicycle I was swearing at all the drivers because they were cutting me up, as you know, as they do in Dublin, and I was really angry. And I remember doing the class and coming out, and the same thing was happening. They were beeping at me, but instead of swearing at them, I was like, hi, it's okay. It was a really strange experience. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I then got the Idiot's Guide to Managing Stress. The Dummy's Guide to Managing Stress. And there were 32 points in there. And the last point was, if all these other steps fail, run away. I was like, okay. So I ran away to the Bahamas and did a yoga teacher training, lived on a beach for a couple of months, and then went traveling. Did another yoga training in San Francisco, went back to San Francisco, and then arrived in Dublin in the middle of the kind of Celtic tiger, and set myself up as a software consultant. I was on about $1,000 a day, which was amazing. But everywhere I was working, I ended up teaching a yoga class, in a basement somewhere, and then eventually got myself into a church hall in Ockram Street in Stony Batter. And one of my students there said to me, there's a space underneath me. It's like a derelict old aluminium processing studio. Would you like to take a look? So I did, and that was really how the Elbow Room started. I was supposed to be teaching myself, just me teaching classes. Within 2 weeks of signing the lease, I was pregnant. I was like, Shai, what am I going to do? So then I basically I had to get other people to teach for me, and that's when the whole kind of studio concept developed. And I was doing a lot of pregnancy classes, then baby classes. So that's how I got into it.
I remember, I think I first met you when you were pregnant, Lisa, because you, at that stage, I had Prana Yoga Centre, and you came in now and again, which is very gracious of you for us. Oh, yeah. The
other thing is I actually before I went to do my teacher training, I actually went to Colm's classes in Dublin 8. So he was my teacher for a while, which was great.
There's a lot of overlapping because I did some of my first workshops with Tony in the Elbow Room, and Lisa was definitely pregnant. I think you were just slightly ahead of me with my first child, but I was at the stage where I was starting a family too, and I felt a bit insecure. I was teaching in the school halls and running around a few corporates, dusty canteens, musty, dusty school halls, coming home choking with the dust allergy I have and asthma and everything, and thinking, there must be a better way of doing this. And then seeing the setup in the Elbow Room, I was sort of inspired. So I signed my first lease in a place in Ranelagh shortly after that. And then Greg was teaching around downtown, Prana Studios. So I think you taught in
prana once or twice, Colm, as well, because I remember the spade was a decent sized space, but it was maybe 20, 22 people you'd take in. But I remember you were sort of tag teaming with Tony Purcell.
That's right, yes.
And great teacher, Tony. And one of you was moving around and one of you was demonstrating on the windowsill, I seem to remember.
Tony, yes, probably Tony in his short shorts, yes. But we had a lot of crack in those days because we were, until kids arrived, I had a lot of flexibility in my businesses. Were moving away from me, the nightclubs and bars, and I had the opportunity then to travel. And in those days, the life of a yoga teacher was very simple because we had a nice little community. We met to practice. Some of us were doing Ashtanga at this stage. And we met in the pottery on Hasteby Street mornings. And we'd all go and have coffee in Camden Street afterwards. Can you imagine in Camden Street then there was only one place serving coffee? Can you imagine that at 8 o'clock in the morning? And we'd all swap notes. Everyone was freelancing, teaching, and we'd organise covering each other's classes and halls, and we were all pretty much in school halls and that. But all of a sudden, we were actually able to make money from doing this, and then we'd reinvest it. We'd go off for the summer. Some of us were following particular teachers, say Graham and Leonie Northfield, Australians, who went to Paros in Greece every summer. So that was kind of nice. And then I went to India a couple of Christmases in a row, to Goa, to follow various teachers from John Scott to Purple Valley Yoga Centre, whatever. So it was quite, for, early 30s, it was quite an idyllic lifestyle. You could get a blast of sun in the summer and refine your training, hang out with your mates, and then in the winter, escape the winter because you had school hall. So you just say to the caretaker, I'll be back in February. Here's a bottle of whiskey. Thanks very much, But it was time to start the studios, I think. Yeah?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right. It really was. It was quite an idyllic time because I remember, the pottery in Hasteby Street, they had a sort of a double room for yoga, but there were about, I'd say, 10 or 12 yogis who made up so many of the yoga scene. Lisa, it was just a little too far from you because you were on the other side of the river.
No one crossed the river at that time.
No. And a big question, who opened first?
Me.
You. What was your date?
It was October 2002.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you definitely did. I was March 2003.
Yeah, you were just after me, yeah.
Just after. And Colm, you were...
My first baby was February 2003. And I seem to remember that October getting the place ready to open in January, or to open just before Christmas, 2002. Would that be right? Kira Cronin opened a yoga room about a year after me. There was a little place called Exhale in Sandymount that was perhaps operating before, but we were certainly the first wave of dedicated yoga studios with pops, with a place you close at night and it was just a yoga studio, and open in the morning it was a yoga studio, because the pain of dealing with the school halls, the heating in the winter, the dirt, the cleaning, the elections. I arrived there one night to teach and they hadn't told me, but there was the elections were going on and they had ballot boxes and guards there, so I had to turn away people. So they treated me with no respect.
I remember going off to teach. I used to teach on the north side, just off Parnell Square, and I'd always arrive with a huge bag of, I wouldn't bring yoga mats. Everyone brought their own yoga mat, but I'd bring the belts and the blocks and the bricks. And I started then bringing a heater as well, because you just wouldn't know. Some days the heat would be on, some days not. And I was coming from sort of, I was living on South Great Georgia Street more or less at that stage. So it was a fair hike carrying a heater under your arm. But that was part of the, as you said, I was late 20s, early 30s, didn't think twice about it.
I had a Mini Cooper.
I stole my heater from the hall. Somebody walked out with a gas heater. Then they stole the piano in the school hall. I don't know how you steal a piano in front of a school in Bagot Street.
I remember I drove a Mini Cooper and I had some of those kind of old, those massive plastic bags in the back, trying to kind of pull out a rake of mats and blocks and bring them up into Auckland Street Church Hall.
Yeah.
It was definitely time to open those studios. And we're going back kind of 20 years more or less there. How have the 20 years been? Let's not talk about COVID. How's the journey been over the 20 years?
Well, I remember being established at the school hall, and I think Roy Keane said something about doing yoga. I think he actually trekked down to a hall in Manchester, or wherever he lives, Cheshire, and did a yoga class and started swearing by it and mentioned in interviews. And all of a sudden, all these lads arrived in my classes. Before, it was 95% women. And then Madonna's album Ray of Light would have come out around that time. Somebody can,
with the Ashtanga chant on it. Yeah.
So then it really suddenly people began to take yoga seriously, and I didn't have to explain to people what yoga is. Apart from my prospective father-in-law saying, "Is there any money in this old yoga? What's going on with the yoga now? My daughter's expecting your child. What's going on?" But luckily, I was able to answer that. He was quite intimidating. He was an ex-guard. Anyway, so then it accelerated, as you said, Greg, earlier on. Everybody finds themselves as a yoga teacher, and there was definitely hubris from we moved into the Celtic Tiger years, and friends of mine were being flown off. I got some very exotic gigs out in Killiney, teaching people with a lot of money. There was a lot of people in the music business who fancied themselves doing a bit of yoga, flying people off here, there, and everywhere. We all have our little stories. So it was interesting. It was fun. It was edgy, and we got to see into some interesting places, and I certainly got to see some interesting glimpses of how other people live. But meantime, we were continuing our training. Most importantly, I think that's where we need to go back to. Certainly, you, Greg, continued on the Iyengar path, which, as you know, is extremely arduous for people who don't understand. It's not just doing a couple of weekends in Thailand and saying you're a yoga teacher. You have to.
You were actually saying, Colm, about how you were heading off to India, and mostly for my training, I was going to Sunderland. But the yoga was
Crumlin, in fairness. The India was only a reward at the end of the year. But yes, Sunderland, or I went to Greece, to London, and when you go to India, you're often just following non-Indian people anyway, white Australian or American people, or British people, whatever. But yes, you're in India, all right, but you're not in a temple or an ashram up the side of a cliff. For most people, you've gone to Pune, obviously, and to the source, Greg. Yeah.
It was a fantastic experience. Really good. Quite life-changing in a way. It felt like it went to a sort of a new depth of yoga. Working with people with such a depth of yoga experience, I guess, felt very, very profound. And I'd love to go back. I feel my idea of travel has sort of shifted a little bit now, but who knows in the future. But I agree with you. I think keeping on the yoga, keeping on the path, keeping on the practice is, for me, Lisa, you were talking about your paranoia and let's just say your stress levels. Like, I've had exactly the same, not the paranoia, but I have found yoga to be such a wonderful tool to be able to lean into over the years. And it has got me through so many ups and downs. And there have, like running a yoga studio, let's be honest, it's not all love and light. There have been so many challenges. And like, we've chatted to each other about our various challenges and worked through them, and we're still facing challenges. It's great having that community. But it's such a great thing. I think keeping up with it is so important.
Yeah, I think that, like, for me, the last 20 years have been an exercise in the hustle, really. It's been finding 101 ways to keep your head above water. I think one thing people don't realize when they go from being a yoga teacher to a yoga studio owner, you're just the same as any other business owner. You have all the highs and the lows and the stresses and the strains that come along with it. And having yoga as your kind of foundation practice, for me it's meditation really, which helps me stay really, really grounded. And for my business, it's always been finding things. I've had my business plan has always been quite interesting, I suppose, and I've always put things on that I and my family would need. So, I got to the stage, pregnant, so pregnancy yoga, baby came out, mum and baby yoga. I wanted to get fit again, so baby minding, well, the yoga went on. And, as the kids grew older, children's yoga, as the children started displaying some additional needs, then I started, a practice with occupational therapy. So the studio for me became a real kind of community facility, if you like, in that it wasn't just a yoga studio, it really merged in. So, having to diversify as well, I suppose, was one thing that's kept me floating all these years as well. So, there's actually so much going on in the studio. Once I think about two years on. Oh, sorry, someone keeps ringing me.
Oh, Lisa's gone momentarily. I've had so much respect for Lisa Colm. I know you'll agree, because she always, here she comes back. Lisa, I'm just talking about you. I have so much respect because of the way you do. You kind of do what you need, but what you need, everyone needs as well. So if it's childcare, you're providing childcare. If it's childcare so they can go to yoga, that's great. If it's, as you say, additional needs, that's there as well. You're not afraid to diversify while still staying within your ethos, which I think is really good and really brave. And I know you've had a lot of ups and downs with, you've had, tenancy issues, or would you say lease issues and all that well, mind you, we've all had a bit of that over the years, because running a yoga studio, it is so much more than yoga. The yoga is the lovely part of it, really. And then paying rates, paying bills are paying rates, paying bills. It's the same with anything.
It's the unblocking of drains. I think that's the worst part of it for me.
You probably do more of that than you do of
drains that go really bad. Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah, you've had a lot of that over the years, because we've talked about your drains.
I have 2 sets of sewage rods, Greg, if you ever need to borrow a set.
Okay. You're my man.
I have a cool little case. They come in a round case that go over your shoulder.
Oh, right, just a bit like a yoga mat in a way, or like Dick Van Dyke in Mary Poppins.
Yeah, they're really cool. Yeah.
And where do you guys feel that the world of yoga is going in Dublin?
Well, I actually I was having coffee yesterday with one of my team who is from South Africa, and I'm very pleased to say that one of the large studios there has not only recovered, but has opened in a new, larger place, a location. Classes are booming, business is booming. When I say business, I mean the community. We have to talk about the last 2 years. We have to just mention it briefly, but it's been, I think it was very much peaking here in February 2020 in terms of a couple of studios that just opened, particularly near me in Dublin 6 area. Other places had gone from 1 or 2 rooms to, really quite exponential growth. And it was becoming a little bit like Santa Monica, I think, with the competition that there probably been in Santa Monica back in the early 2000s. But hopefully not the, big chains coming in and price wars and all the rest of it. But certainly the community of yoga has had a huge blow given to it. And the community of everything in the city has had a huge, blow. We're all recovering. mental health is something that we're just, I think, only seeing the lag in what's going to emerge the next few months is only now becoming apparent. The damage is done to our society, our children, and now we're in a most stressful time. I mean, everyone is worried about money. Things are overheating. I just heard today of a house near where I live in Dublin 6. It's been rented for €10,000 per month, and there are two families fighting over that rent. And, things are overheating again. It feels to me very much like 2006, 2009 again. But during that time, yoga was more important to people, even though they had loads of money. They realized that they had even more stress to deal with. So yoga classes just got busier and busier. And likewise, in recession, people were stressed, so they came to yoga. So in a way, we are here. We are here for people wherever they're at, on a peak or a trough, and we are the baseline. We are here. In terms of where yoga is going, I think things have changed utterly. Locations have now changed. I'm really waiting to see what happens at the end of this year. Is the return to work on site going to happen? Are people? I know a lot of my business is still online. It's here to stay. That has also increased our reach to people, because people can now have a better quality of life. Instead of sitting in a car going to work, they can do a quick yoga class in the morning and then go to their desk. So that's better. What is not better is a lot of people are quite solitary. They're on their own. The community, as we all experienced back in the late 90s of early 2000s, of going to a studio and meeting people and going for coffee with them and meeting them. I used to take my class out for a beer in the summer onto the canal, and people met each other, and we just had such a good time. And retreats, I know, Greg, you're still doing yoga retreats, but you cannot get that online, right? You cannot replicate that community online. Likewise, this is a wonderful chat this morning, but you can't beat going and meeting someone for a cup of coffee or a beer or a glass of wine,
Yeah. I agree with you. I think there is great value. The feedback I get from so many people who are sticking with Zoom is that they were commuting maybe for an hour each way to get their hour-long yoga class. So an hour of yoga became a full evening, for example. So I think there's great value in that. What I'm seeing is people are coming into the studio less, but they're coming in for a shot in the arm, for a real top-up. And then they're getting their day-to-day practice on Zoom. I think we've lost a lot of the interesting smaller yoga studios in the last 2 years. Like right beside my house, iYoga, the Iyengar Center, closed down. And, those are the kind of yoga studios that we benefit from. But I think I'd like to think we're offering something similar in that it's an authentic yoga experience, and you can't be coming in for that. And the people I'm finding, to be honest, it's really slow. People are really slow to come in. And, people, I don't know if people realize that they're, I get people saying, oh, you must be delighted things are back to normal. And I'm saying, yeah, you just need to come back in now as well.
I think one of the things that we kind of I was talking about to someone the other week is that we know that numbers are down, but I think as teachers now that we have to kind of really make sure, not just us as kind of studio owners, but the teachers as well, really need to make sure that those people who come in are getting just extra love and, getting that sense of the value. So, it's really important now that teachers don't just show up and do their class. They have to really mind themselves and show up with a huge amount to give, because unless people appreciate that value and share it with their friends, we're not going to see that tranche of people coming back. So I think it's really important to really give good yoga at the moment, just to get people to understand the value of it, to really understand and to feel it.
The problem I think we all share is we've lost, there's been a big shift. We've lost a few teachers, and some people just couldn't hang in there during the pandemic. They needed to get, full-time jobs. They needed to relocate. We were broadcasting classes during the lockdown from Sweden, Sardinia, Kerry, all sorts of places under the Yoga Dublin banner. Likewise, our audience showed up in Kazakhstan and 39 other countries when we went on a Google Analytics. So I don't know what's going on, but the poor teachers a lot of them are so burnt out. They've been really challenged. And, teachers, we let some teachers come into the studios because they literally didn't have space at home to do a class, and they had kids or whatever. Then there was the problem of being closed down. Some studios, which shall not be named, reopened when they shouldn't have during lockdown, which was very irresponsible, in my opinion. We were trying to eradicate a highly transmissible virus, and at that time, the government advice was not to reopen, but they did. And maybe
what talked to me about that, Colm? Sorry to talk across you, but if something went wrong, their insurance would have been void.
Their insurance would have been void, and also it wouldn't have been great, for our community to be known as a super spreader events. And we saw the complete farce that certain politicians on other sides of the various bodies of water have ignored that advice, and the damage it did, infecting their staff. While we all have a story, I'm sure, of somebody who couldn't see a relation who's ending their lives on their own in hospital. I went through some of that myself with my family, and the complete denial of the threat that was there, and also the cherry picking of rules to suit oneself. But anyway, that's hopefully over. But the poor teachers are very much, they need the energy transfer from their students from class as well. There's harder than just trying to teach people on a screen all the time, certainly a bit here and there. And then hybriding, that's tricky enough too, when you have people in front of you and people on a screen. So I hope our yoga teachers nurture themselves this summer, and I hope they take some time off, and I hope they come back fresh in the autumn, some of them. But we need to mind the people who mind us,
Yeah, we do. And I think that, as I've had people say to me that they are worried to come in, that they're going to possibly be yoga shamed because they haven't done any yoga in 2 years. And genuinely, Lisa, you're talking about teachers really need to bring everything. I found getting back into the studio and seeing people has just been the best buzz, because that's what we have loved doing for 20 years. And to see people come back, I couldn't give a hoot if they haven't done a yoga pose for 2 years. I'm just really excited to see them, because we might know their family situation or where they live, but we do get a lovely, we have a lovely relationship with our students. We know, in a certain way, we know them very well. We know the shape of the back of their knee, We know how their muscles engage and how their breath is. And so it's really exciting to get people coming back. And that's like, people who are coming back they're all saying, I so miss this. I didn't know how much I missed this. And I think we've all come through the wars a little bit with the last 2.5 years now. And we're all a little bit kinder and a little more mellow and a little more patient. And where I probably would have given people a hard time, now it's only just a buzz to see them.
Yeah, definitely. It's inspired me. Like, I haven't taught a yoga class to a group for probably about 4 years now. So I'm going to, when I have an announcement coming in the next couple of months, and I will be teaching a class or two. So that's going to be fun.
We'll be there, Greg. Yeah.
We'll be there, absolutely. And then can we go to the canal for wine afterwards?
Yeah.
Can I wrap this up? I've thoroughly enjoyed having the chat with the two of you, and we'll come back and we'll do this again, and we'll do this without the cameras and with wine and beer also, needless to say. But it's been great to hear something of the tip of the iceberg of the stories.
Yeah, and just to say, it's been lovely being invited to this today, and I suppose people aren't aware that there's actually a community of the studio owners. We had a support group going during Zoom times with people all around the country, our colleagues in other studios, and we all gave each other support where we don't view ourselves really as rivals. I don't think there's certainly competitiveness, but there was a lot of openness and sharing, and we did some lobbying together. We were trying to get some assistance from the government and so on, and a lot of us shared where we're at, and it was very, very supportive time to have. And of course, we're lucky we can actually hook up regular basis because we don't live too far away from each other. But I felt sorry, particularly for some people who are in rural areas who are finding the lockdown particularly challenging. So we hope around the country that it's going to pick up as well. But yeah. So onwards and upwards, as they say. Yes.
I'd like to say to Colm, the Walsh brothers, as I call them, or the other yoga dons, it's just been amazing having your support for the last 20 years. Like, we have met every 6 months for the longest time, and it's just been incredible having that support. So thank you.
Yeah, long may it last.
Long may it last. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.